Growing up, I always thought it was just meant to be a good person to just make it to heaven. I was brought up by my mom and dad telling me that, as long as you become a good boy, you'll make it into heaven. I was further taught that by my grandmother as well, because she was just one of the most godliest women. But then one day, a pastor tried to explain to me Christ, but he didn't really explain it too well. He kind of made it seem like it was a toss of a coin, like it was all dumb luck. That heaven and hell, it could be, Hitler could go to heaven, and I could end up in hell, and I just couldn't buy that at the time. Honestly, believe it or not, I was born right here in America since I was born, but that was the only touch I would have heard of Jesus. The first time I ever heard of Jesus was when I was 17. Family had torn apart. My my mom kicked out my dad, and my mom lost her job, and we lost our house. And before we started, we had everything. My mom could pay stuff on cash. We were middle class, living the American dream. But the thing that we didn't have was love. We didn't have that caring support of a family. And it eventually divided us. Greed eventually tore our family apart. My dad went over to Mesquite. I couldn't trust my mom anymore, and I couldn't trust my dad. I was stuck in the middle as an only child. I didn't have nobody to go to. But then one day, my aunt decided, high school, she decided to invite me to Celebrate Freedom concert. It's a concert they have in Texas. And I never heard of any of the bands, but it was stuff like Toby Mac, Skillet, and whatnot. But I was just happy to go because anything just to escape the household that I was born in, the hell, I guess you could say. My aunt, my uncle, they gave me a show of unconditional love that I'd never felt before. A love that I had been searching for somewhat. When I always made mistakes at home, I was just brought down by my mother, my father. I was always set to try to be the perfect son, but I couldn't reach that. But my aunt and uncle accepted me for who I was. For the corrupted person who makes mistakes. They decided me to go to church, and I was excited because I've been trying to get my mom to take me to church for like 10 years. And the only thing I knew of God was that he existed. I decided to go. I went, and I don't remember the sermon because I don't know what the Bible was. I just remember it was over Daniel, and I was searching the whole time trying to find Daniel. But then, at the end of all that, I went to a dinner afterwards with family, and my aunt gave me my aunt gave me this Bible, and she said, if you want to start reading it, start with John. So I started reading John. When I got back home, I'm inside my house and everything, and I had my dog beside me. My mom's out getting drunk probably at that moment. My dad's who knows where. And I felt it. As weird as it sounds, I felt the nails that crucified Christ. And it was painful. It was just so hard to imagine that a God like that loved me. And the worst part about it is that I never heard about it until I was 17. Sometimes I wish that I had heard about him sooner, but I never did. And then eventually the remote fell on my bed, off my bed to the floor, and it turned on to Daystar, to some pastor saying the time is now, and the time is now to accept God. And at that day I accepted him. But the one thing that got me so angry was that I had Christian friends around me. And after I told them, like, yeah, I accepted Christ, it's like, yeah, I accepted Christ too. I wanted to punch him in the face so much. Because they knew me for 4 to 5 years. And they didn't tell me the good news. They didn't tell me about what it is to be forgiven by a loving God. That there is a God out there that cares for the poor, the hopeless, the helpless, people like me. to this day, I remember that. And I always try to make sure that each person each person I come in contact with, at least has heard of Jesus. It may not be much, but I do what I can. And that's what, if I could encourage anybody from my story, don't keep the good news away from somebody. Because you never know that they may have never heard of Jesus before. I went through 17 years of my whole life not knowing who Jesus was, of not knowing his forgiveness and his salvation. And it's made me a better man because of it. Eventually I had to leave home, but I trusted in God because he's all I have. He's all I can depend on when the going gets tough. And I'm glad to say that my mom and me have a better relationship, and so with me and my dad. And that I've been on a crazy adventure that I never thought was possible. But that couldn't have happened if my aunt didn't reach out to me. So the question I have to ask you is, who are you going to reach out?